Today, the House of Representatives passed the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act by a vote of 218 to 206, with only 2 Democrats joining the Republicans. The bill, reintroduced by Florida Congressman Greg Steube, seeks to amend Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 to keep female sports in school athletic programs exclusively for biological females. Now, given how the trans issue hurt Democrats during the election, what does today's vote tell us about how well they were listening? Joining me now to discuss the latest is the author of the bill, Congressman Greg Steube. He represents the 17th Congressional District of Florida. Congressman Steube, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, hey, Tony. Thanks for having me.
All right. Are you surprised by how the Democrats in the House voted today?
Yeah, I was surprised 2 years ago when not a single Democrat voted for this common sense piece of legislation, and today only 2. This is going to be an election issue for them in 2 years. Maybe they think that it's 2 years is a long time from now, but we saw this as an election issue just a couple of months ago during the presidential race. It's like 72% of Americans believe that boys shouldn't be in girls' sports. This is a overwhelmingly supported issue across America. So it is very shocking. And then you had one Democrat vote present. That Democrat is in a district that he only won by like 1.5, 2 points. So you can guarantee that that's going to be an issue he's going to have to deal with going into the next election cycle. But it just shows you how out of touch Democrats are with the majority of America.
I mean, this has been building really over the last 10 years. We've seen this. And you had this legislation several years ago, and it's been moving toward this point. And as you mentioned, it was a big issue in this past fall's election. And there are 13 congressional districts which Democrats hold today that Donald Trump won in the election. And the Trump campaign made a big deal out of women's sports and the transgender issue. It's not going to go away, as you said. What is keeping them from, again, this is a very common sense piece of legislation. It's about fairness. It's you don't really have to get into the biology and the whole issue, although I do think it's ideologically the underpinning here is about creation, male, female. They reject the idea that there's absolute truth. But on the surface, this is about fairness. What don't they get?
Yeah, I don't know, because it is going to be an issue for them as you move into this next cycle. And you're right. I started out my speech talking about the word and truth, and that there is men and women, and that God created us independently and separately. And so, yeah, I don't understand what they're getting, but they're afraid of their left flank. They're afraid that a progressive Democrat's going to come along and that's pro-trans or whatever the case may be. They call it, the Democrats call this discriminating against trans women and trans boys and all of that kind of stuff, made up terminology that 10 years ago nobody would even know what that word means, but apparently now that's a very used term in Democratic circles. So the bottom line is politically they're afraid of their left flank. And if a progressive Democrat comes along and fights him on this issue, the far left of their party will root out any type of reason on these issues.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the terminology, I'm still struggling to keep up with it because it doesn't make sense. Trans man, trans woman, what exactly does that mean? But you now have a transgendered member of Congress in the Democratic Party that is in the House for the first time. Is that going to lock the Democratic Party into this view that you can choose your own gender?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely it does. I believe you're rejecting the truth when you do those type of things. And as I said on my speech on the House floor, they believe there are 74 different genders. And they'll probably, in 5 years, there'll probably be more than that. One of it is astral gender, that you believe that you're a gender related to outer space. I mean, that's how absurd these things are. But they can define that. They can define what astral gender is, but they can't define what a woman is. And And they're so afraid of their left flank that I believe that they're just going to vote no, and they'll try to give you all these reasons as to why. And all the arguments on the floor were all outright lies.
Okay.
There's not going to be anybody checking the gender of sports. It's based on the birth certificate.
I want to play one of the clips of one of those from the left flank of the Democratic Party. Ayanna Pressley had this to say about the bill, and I want you to respond to it. Clip number 9.
Imagine you are 8 years old, trying out for the soccer team, and your coach demands that you show them your genitals. That is abuse. That is exploitation. That is egregious. But it is exactly what this Republican bill does.
An absolute, complete, outright lie.
I mean, how do they stand there and say this with a straight face?
Well, because they believe their own lies, and then the mainstream media is going to perpetuate that lie. It's just like what the mainstream media has been doing when Trump collusion and all these other kind of things. The bill says it is the gender you were assigned biologically at birth. So none of this that they're arguing is ever going to happen. It's a lie. It's to try to enrage people. Oh, that's horrible, and Republicans are bad. And it's an outright lie, and the mainstream media is going to perpetuate that lie. It's just unfortunate. All you got to do, the bill's very short. It's like a page and a half or 2 pages or whatever it is. Read it for yourself if you don't believe me, but that's exactly what it is it's the gender you were assigned biologically at birth will determine what sport you play in.
Greg, let me just ask you this, because, I mean, look, this is very straightforward. It's not a lengthy bill. It's not complicated. It's something that 10 years ago we would have thought, why are you even talking about this? But it is reality today. But when you see that a major political party, the other major political party, the Democratic Party, only 2 members of that party were able to vote for this piece of legislation, where are we headed as a country?
Well, we've seen just evil perpetuated during the Biden administration, the complete removal of truth. We've seen that for the last 4 years. Thankfully, we got President Trump coming in. But I don't think that this party is going to move to the center in any way because, again, they're afraid of their left flank. They're afraid of the trans movement, and they're afraid of progressives. And so that's dictating their determinations on issues, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of their districts, like those 13 districts that Trump won that are currently has a Democratic member of Congress, I can guarantee you if you poll that district, the majority of that district believes that women's sports should be just that and that biological men shouldn't be allowed to compete in those women's sports. But they're so afraid of their left flank, they're going to continue to act in this manner.
And if we have the pattern that we've seen over the, I've been here over 20 years, we see kind of 4 years of conservative governance, 4 years of liberal governance. It's an almost back and forth. As you pointed out in your speech on the floor about this today, you talked about the fact that we're created by God, male and female. And you've done that before. You don't hide that fact. You're a Christian. The way forward, is it not recognizing that this is also a spiritual battle that we're going to have to engage in it, not just politically, but spiritually, with boldness and courage and appealing to heaven?
And more people being willing to go to the floor and talk about that, more people being willing to go to the floor and talk about their faith, to talk about the word, to talk about truth. And that's what we have to do to compete against evil in this country. And you're right, 100%, this is a spiritual battle, and we should wage it that way, as we're told in Ephesians.
Is the Republican Party moving on that? Because I recall over the last few years, there's been some timidity among Republicans of advancing on this issue and speaking, as you just described, openly about the fact that there is truth. Are we making progress?
Well, I hope so. I'm honored to have the opportunity to do it, and I try to do it on a regular basis. Anytime I have the opportunity to address issues like that, I obviously bring up my faith, I bring up the truth, I bring up the word. But yeah, more members need to be comfortable in doing that. I think we've elected, I haven't gotten to know some of the freshmen very well, but most of the people I talk to are obviously Christians, and hopefully they'll allow that to dictate how they act up here, and also be faithful about putting that out there to the American people that this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Well, Congressman Greg Steube, I want to commend you for your steadfastness and for your boldness and your compassion as well, and for being a good representative, not just for the folks in Florida, but for all of us believers across the country. Thanks for joining us.